Okay, everyone, calling the meeting to order, Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Hospital Core member.
Oh, we did.
And
They left.
yeah,
Hold on, give me one moment.
Yeah, no trouble.
Rafael apparently left. It may take them a moment to log back in, so we may wait or.
well, since his amended attendance is the first item, we didn't need to wait.
We can start the meeting and then there's the rest of what we're doing. Right now,
See if we can get back on.
right now he's just absent.
He was on for the entire closed session, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. You want to take roll while we're,
Yeah, Noel, can we come back to the item to have Chair Frail on virtually when he rejoins?
Yeah, do you want to go out of order on the agenda? Is that what you're asking?
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine. The chair can do that. Or the vice chair, the acting chair.
When we see him, we'll move back to that.
okay, perfect. So will you pull the board?
Yes, sorry. Director Gallagher,
Present.
Director Pimentel,
Here.
Director Nunez,
Here.
and Vice Chair Fox.
Here. So as we all know, these meetings are publicly broadcast via Zoom. So even in the case the public is not physically present, please consider that participants may be virtual and the meeting is recorded and posted for public viewing. Do we have any closed session reports? Perfect. And does anyone have any modifications to the agenda? And so that brings us to public comments on matters not on the agenda. And Rosie, when you have a minute, will you just check and see if there are any raised hands?
No raised hands on that.
Okay, and any comments from members in the public? Anyone? All right, perfect. So that brings us to comments from board members. If anyone has any comments they'd like to share.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt. So is the consent calendar the one that you're skipping over until
No.
Director Friel gets back
Consent
on?
calendar is next.
No, we're going to skip over the request for the motion to have Chair Field join remotely. Since he's
Okay.
not here. And then it's okay to do that and come back when he arrives.
Do
right?
that whenever he's here.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Comment.
Comments. One comment. The election is next Tuesday. There's obviously a very important measure to the hospital on the election, March 5th. But there are other very important measures as well too. Very important offices that we will have a say in. And I just keep thinking about the opportunity that we have as individuals that other people in other countries do not have, or across the world don't have, of having a say of who they want to represent them and having a say in the direction of their community. And so just everyone who's in here today, wherever you live throughout Santa Cruz County or Central Coast or over the hill, wherever, just make sure that you send in your ballot or that you vote on March 5th. So
Want to echo that. Thank you, Board Member Nunez. Went online recently, saw that we're trending towards a 10% voter turnout on this primary. And that's way low. It's typically, we might think 20 to 30% would be your estimate. So we just help get the community engaged. There is a lot on this ballot. There are measures, there are supervisors that are all critical to the future of our community and set the pathway for what our county looks like and what our systems look like. So it's just, please spread the word. Anybody online, anybody watching this in reruns, if you're seeing this before Tuesday, March 5th, please make sure there's so many different ways to vote. Drop off your ballots. There's drop off ballot places all around the cities and where you're at. And mail ballots is still accepted, but get them in quickly. So just we'd like to see those numbers come up. We all, it's a great right we have. It's a beautiful benefit. So I'm talking to my daughters too, Caitlin and Kirsten. Get out and vote. I know you haven't yet.
Anything else, Joe? know.
I just want to share that Watsonville Community Hospital now has a volunteer doula program. Yay! So, doulas are, people who volunteer to support, birthing people in labor. And, so over a year ago, the midwives started to create a hospital-based program, and that has now kicked off. And I had the pleasure to be on the unit this week with one of our volunteer doulas, and I gotta say, it was awesome. So, these are people who volunteer in the community to support people in labor, and it was really such a positive, lovely experience. So thank you to all the magic that had to go into it to make it happen. Anything else? So next, that brings us to the consent agenda. So we'll take any public comments on the consent calendar, and if there are none, I'll be looking for a motion to pass the consent agenda. Comments? Anyone online? No? Okay, perfect.
I'll make the motion to accept staff recommendation on all 4 items.
Is there a second?
Second.
Director Gallagher,
Yes.
Director Dignez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox,
Yes.
Chair Frail. Not here.
Is he not on yet?
No, he's working on it. He said help.
Okay. Okay, so this brings us to the discussion agenda. So the first item on the discussion agenda is the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Hospital Floor Organizational Meeting and Election of Officers. The recommendation is to consider and vote on nominees presented by the ad hoc nominating committee that was passed end of January. And we'll be looking for a motion to elect a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. And then these newly elected officers will take office on March 27th. So I will turn now to the ad hoc committee to share with us. Is it you, Joe? I'm like looking at Joe.
I think Marcus is gonna present.
Please present.
So, at our January 31st, 2024 board meeting, the board formed an ad hoc committee consisting of Dr. Joe Gallagher, CEO Steve Gray, and myself, Marcus Pimentel, and with the goal of coming up with a slate of nominations for the hospital board today. And those nominations will be presented to this board and would take effect as our interim chair. So it said would take effect March 27th at our next board meeting. In the course of the ad hoc discussion, we wanted to ensure we reached out to all board members and to do an open solicitation of their interest in serving. Nobody was voluntold and everybody volunteered, so we appreciate that. And we came up with what we believe to be a really strong slate of officers that I will be telling you about. My phone comes back on.
That's strong, huh?
Yeah. I just want to make sure, it's like the Oscars, I gotta make sure you can't forget somebody, So for chair, I nominate on behalf of the ad hoc committee, Director Tony Nunez to be elected as the chair of the board for the hospital. For vice chair, the ad hoc recommends and I nominate Director Joe Gallagher to be elected as the vice chair of the board. For treasurer, the ad hoc recommended, and I'm willing to continue to serve as the treasurer, should that motion be made. And for secretary, the ad hoc recommended, and I nominate on behalf of the ad hoc, Director Cox to serve as secretary of the board. And these were based on the input received from board members and the deliberation of the ad hoc committee.
So do we need to do a motion for each one? Yeah, right? Okay.
So I've nominated Director Nunez to be the chair, and I would ask that to be, that's my motion. I ask that be a second and be considered.
I think that's second.
Okay, Director Gallagher,
Yes.
Director Nunez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox,
Yes.
and Chair Friel. And just make sure I have this correct, this was Pimentel first and
Dr. Gallagher.
Gallagher,
Gallagher.
second.
So for item number 2, for a motion, I motion on behalf of the ad hoc that we elect Director Gallagher to be our vice chair of the board. My motion.
I'll second that.
Yes.
Director Nunez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox.
Yes.
Chair Friel is not going to be able to rejoin. So I will not be.
Again, restating for the treasurer, I'm willing to serve.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendation of the ad hoc committee.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Director Gallagher,
Yes.
Director Nunez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox.
Yes.
And then for secretary, I motion Director Cox be elected as secretary of the board.
I'll second that.
Director Gallagher,
Yes.
Director Nunez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox.
Yes. Excellent. All right. Yes, thank you everyone for volunteering and serving.
Can I do one thing that's related to this, even though he's not able to join us? We'll do this again publicly, but just so that the public knows. We want to thank Chair Friel for being our first board chair. So we had this, thank you, Lisa. Everybody who worked on this had a lovely gavel plaque made. It says founding board chair 2022 to 2024. Presented to John Friel. Thank you for believing in our mission and offering invaluable leadership and support.
I'll unofficially motion that we all get together for a photo in between at the end of this meeting, and all of you too.
I'll stand in for John.
All right. I'll wait till that.
We'd appreciate that.
Thank you for doing that. All right, well, that brings us to
It does.
your report.
Can I stand? Is that allowed?
Yeah.
All right. Do you have my actual slide? It's on.
I love that photo.
I think we should all move in, be a closer family with you guys. Who's gonna join me? Come on, team, let's get it.
Okay, so I'm gonna do my report. All of my reports so far have been verbal. This one is gonna be visual so that we can see some of the things that staff are starting to see on a monthly and routine basis. Oh, look at that first. So we're gonna talk a little bit about the hospital dashboard and drill down into the patient experience scores. It's still there, good. So when in creating our dashboard, so the dashboard, the goal of the dashboard is that we have something visual and something that identifies the measures of success and the way that we're measuring success, guided by, at the very top, the mission, vision, values of the organization. So we're paying honor to this strategic planning process that the board and community members and staff went through when the district was formed. And it has direct integration with the strategic priorities. So these 4 strategic priorities that the strategic plan laid out specifically for the hospital are the foundation of the dashboard. And the dashboard is the manifestation of how we're measuring success in clinical quality and patient experience, talent and culture, clinical services and access, and being financially sustainable. We wanted to identify measures that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. People have heard of that, the SMART goal theory, and that's really important to us. We don't want to spend a lot of time searching for data and finding data if we don't have to. So we'll get the things that we know that we're able to measure. And we're also guided by this Baldrige principle, this Baldrige excellence framework principle of Let's See, which means that every single data point, we're able to look at levels, how are we doing? We're able to look at trends, how are we doing over time? Are we improving or getting worse? Comparisons, are we able to compare ourselves to national benchmarks, statewide benchmarks, other local competitors, whatever it might be, all of the above if we can. And is it integrated, meaning all the above, all the stuff above? Is it integrated with our strategic plan? Is it integrated with our mission, vision, values? And so the dashboard is color coded, right? The idea is that you can stand back and without even having to read it, you can see how we're doing. So blue is best practice or our stretch goal. This is as good as we can get. Green is really good. It means we're hitting the target for the year. White is baseline. It's kind of just, we want to be at least there. And if it's red, it means we're not quite at baseline yet. And dashboards that have no red on them are really cool, they're really exciting, and they're really rare. Right, and they also could mean that we didn't really set our bars high enough, right? And that we need to sort of stretch a little bit more. So a little bit of red on the dashboard, we're okay, especially at the beginning of the year as you're working towards things and working towards things. So here's our dashboard as it stands right now. That number on the finance number, I think, changed a little bit a couple times, which we'll talk about in a minute, but we are still we're red on patient experience with our HCAHPS number, which is a rolling 12-month number. So I'll go into some more details on that one. And then in future meetings, we'll go into details on some of the other ones. But I'm going to drill down on HCAHPS today. For hospital-acquired conditions, we're red because we went up 1 compared on a rolling 12 months compared to the full year of 2023. What we're measuring there is the total number of patients who have had a number of different types of hospital-acquired conditions. So we're looking at pressure ulcers, falls with injury, catheter-associated urinary tract infections, central line-associated bloodstream infections, surgical site infections, and C. diff infections. So it's on a rolling 12 months. So we had I think 3 of those in total in January, and so we're looking at last February through this January. For talent and culture, we're looking at our staff retention rate, which is the percentage of staff that we're able to retain on a rolling 12-month basis. That's at 78%. Last year, we were at 76%, so we're a little bit better. The baseline is just to make sure that we're doing at least as well or better than last year, so that's why that one's white. We go up to the top right, first one under clinical services and access is patients served. And for this one, we're looking at some specific outpatient measures, cardiac cath lab volumes, ambulatory surgery, special procedures, and outpatient radiology. So we had a little bit fewer of those patients than we had on our budget for January. So that one's red. Budget baseline for that one is at least hitting the budget target. The next one is transfers from Watsonville to another facility. So this is one that our emergency department folks measure for us. That we look at the percentage of patients who come to our emergency department who then get transferred out. In 2023, that number was 2.5%, 2.5%. We're trying to beat that, and in January we did. We had 2.1%, which is actually our stretch goal for 2024. So that's off to a good start. And then financial sustainability, Julie will talk about in her report, but we did have a positive month of January that was ahead of target. Staff and physicians can now all see all of this and drill down data on all of the dashboard metrics on our internal website called the Compass. It's just a screenshot, so it's not an interactive thing, but Nancy here, thank you so much for all of your work on this, I know I gave you this and was like, just a vision, and she created the actual thing out of my wild vision. And the dashboard is right there on the front page. There's also a section for a leader blog, there's a section for a leader pages, so you can see who the leaders are, and a bio about each person, and extension, and email address, reach out to them. We've got an employee input section, so so staff are already, we've got a bunch of those already, which has been really fun. People writing emails to administrations, we bring those to our senior leadership teams, respond to those, get those responses out, both on the website and back to the individuals when appropriate. And the mission, vision, values, the strategic priorities are all up on the website as well. So let's do a little bit of a drill down on HCAPS, because that came up a little bit last meeting and there were some questions about it. So I thought this would be a good place to start, drilling down on the dashboard. So we did see that we were red on the rolling 12 months. If you look at it on a month-to-month basis, sort of zoom in on a month-to-month basis, we do have a nice, slightly upward trend, which is really good. So we've had 2 of the last 4 months have been either green or blue, which is great. The January number on the far right is just a sample size of 14 so far. That's just patients who were discharged in the month of January. We usually have 30 or so each month, so that's only about half of the sample size that we'll probably end up with for January. So that one's still a little TBD. The rest of them are probably pretty solid and probably won't change very much. Interestingly too, so the dashboard is showing the percentage of patients who rate us a 9 or a 10 out of 10. It's a scale from 0 to 10, how would you rate the hospital? So this is the percentage of patients who rate us a 9 out of 10, 9 or 10 out of 10. There's another kind of overall hospital rating, which is the likelihood to recommend the hospital. So this is the 13-month trend graph for that one. You can see also a positive upward trend, which is great. And 2 of the last 4 months have been above our baseline or our target. And interestingly, you know, from December to January, the other one went down, but this one went up. So you got it's nice to look at different metrics just to make sure that you're getting the whole picture of the patient's feedback. We go all the way back to 2019 and look at overall patient experience. So far, the 4th quarter of 2023 is the best quarter that we've had since we've had Prescati data from 2019, which is great. Kind of halfway between our baseline target and our full performance target. The baseline target is the 50th percentile nationally. The full performance target here in the middle is the 65th percentile nationally, and the best practice is the 75th percentile nationally. So we are for quarter 4 kind of in between 50 and 65. Now, one question that was asked at the last board meeting was how are we doing compared to other local hospitals? And so the next like half a dozen slides are exactly that. What we have available to us for the other hospitals is data from 2022. And what we have for Watsonville Community Hospital, you can see on the far right is 2022 and then quarter 4 for 2023. So those blue ones give you a nice sense of our own improvement from 2022 to now, and then how does that now compare to the other local hospitals? So for this one, it's likelihood to recommend the hospital, kind of in the middle, a little bit ahead of 2 or 3 of them, and a little bit behind 3 on that one. For doctors communicated well, Dr. Angel's here, nice work. This is really great. Pretty much neck and neck with the top other hospitals in the 2 county area, which is pretty awesome. So that's really great for our 4th quarter. Communication by nurses is actually higher than all the other ones for our 4th quarter. It's higher than all the other local hospitals. So that's something to be really proud of. Sherry and the team, nice work. That's really great. Staff explain medications. So another one where we're right up near the top. Nursing, physicians, that's really great. Really great improvement from 22 to the 4th quarter of 2023. Patient room and bathroom was cleaned. Struggled with this one, it looks like in 2022, but has come up at the end of 2023, so that's good positive momentum and kind of up to into the near the top of our local competitors on that particular set of questions. Hospital was quiet at night, so we're second on this one. Having private rooms really helps on this particular question. If you have a roommate in a hospital, you're gonna tend to not think that it's very quiet at night. Staff received information and education. This is particularly specific to prior to discharge. So some good improvement there, and we're all kind of around the same level on that particular question. So that's patient experience. One quick drill down on quality. We did just get these numbers. These are sort of preliminary numbers from Leapfrog Group. For the fall measure, remember we went from a D to a C. For the spring, we have a score that's about 5 or 6 percentage points, 5 or 6% higher, which is great than the fall. So we're continuing to move in the right direction. We won't know exactly what that score is for another couple of weeks, what letter grade it is. Based on last year, it's probably still a C. I think last year the threshold for a B was like 2.8 something. So we've still got some work to do, and we are working on an action plan to get there. Some of the improving patient experience scores help towards that because that's a big chunk of it. So as we get that past the 50th percentile, up into the 65th percentile, we'll start to move that score up. But for now, continuing to see positive improvement in the right direction is what we're happy about. What we're looking for. I'll take any questions. Dr. Jeff.
The transfers out of the year, the 2.1%, is that all transfers or just patients who, for instance, would neurosurgical cases be included in that 2.1%?
Yeah, so we're counting all of them, knowing that the target is never going to be 0. Right?
No, understood.
Yeah. So, but we know that there are certain types of procedures that if we had 24/7, 365 call in that particular specialty, that particular surgical specialty, you could have kept those patients here. But so the goal is to just make sort of incremental improvement. And if we're opening up the cath lab, maybe there are patients, eventually when the cath lab is fully up and running, we'll have some cardiac patients that might have been transferred now.
Does that include pediatrics? That number, do you know?
Yeah,
The transfer?
the transfer. Yeah, if they come into the emergency department, they're counted in. Yeah.
Would you mind going back a couple slides and thinking of the provider, the nurses, and quiet? Maybe
Sure.
Any random order?
I have a remote control.
Yeah.
There's quiet. Which one do you want?
Yeah. I appreciated how you identified we have a value, we have an asset bonus of having private rooms, but that's also something that the public doesn't think about.
Right.
And unfortunately, some of us have all had different experiences and benefited from this without paying attention to that when you come to the hospital.
Yeah.
That is one of the, I appreciate the context, but I also think it's a really great story to tell people that,
For sure.
we are set up in a way that other hospitals can't. And we're a lot of that is attributed to the fact that this is a relatively newer hospital
Relatively newer.
that we got to rebuild.
Yep. Fully seismic.
Silver lining out of an earthquake. Yeah, fully seismic. So I just appreciate it. Thanks for putting that back up to also start to see there's some good hospitals on there, and the fact that it's really cool. And the providers, I think, had a similar story that we were in the.
Right, go back to the doctor one.
Yeah, wow. That's impressive. That was really cool.
And then there's this one.
Wow. That's remarkable. It's hard this board is hard to celebrate. It's easy to celebrate these moments, but I think we all theme I've been doing, like we've been sprinting so fast and it's hard to
Yeah.
take a moment to celebrate
It's
and
good to
acknowledge the good work that's
see
done.
progress.
So thank you. This is a really good, good presentation. It's good content. It's easy to digest. I really appreciate it. So that's really good.
I'd like to piggyback on Marcus's comment. John Friel is largely responsible for why hospitals design the fall.
Yeah,
I think over-
sure.
Yeah, so I'd like to sort of
I like that.
acknowledge John's work on the design and construction of the hospital.
Perfect.
Steve, I can't hold the tongue. I just want to say, when you're on the ground and on the floor up there, Canadian, you said the same thing. It is really nice place to work. The collaboration with nurses, communication, the physical space, the family feel is really a lovely place to work. So I can't say that enough. And I think this is showing that finally we've gotten through and gotten stabilization over the past year. I'm very excited to see where we can go and getting this message out. We'll show them where we compare. I'm so conscious that we're finally able to see this show and that we come to life. Really great.
It also brings to mind, we have a really diverse community with languages. And the fact that we're scoring so high on communicate well from a staff and doctor provider standpoint is also something a lot of those other, maybe a few of them, but don't have that same challenge. So that's also, like, if you were to tell me our scores are lower, I'd be able to rationalize that. Well, yeah, we have very diverse, three probably distinctly different languages that come into our hospital all the time, and translators are not always available. So the fact that these are about communicating well, I'm getting excited, more excited thinking about that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that is a receive and file. There are no.
Yes.
Nothing further, which leaves us to Julie.
I can try to use a remote. I could even try to stand up. I used to stand up all the time. Use my jacket, but I was cold.
It is called.
It's cold. All right, let me just make sure, so arrow should get this down. If I stay back here from a reading, that's okay with that? Yeah, that way if I have to glance at anything. Okay. Right. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about January. We actually had a very strong month, January. You can see we had net income of 335,000 as opposed to a budgeted loss of 724,000. There's a few things in here that kind of help tell the story. I mean, first off, we had a very strong net revenue month. I'll show you some other slides that talk about volumes, and it wasn't that we, had super high volumes. We did do our strategic charge increase at the beginning of the year. And that, of course, strategic, meaning that we tried to make changes to charges that would actually net something on the net revenue side, because not everything is going to net you more net revenue. But given that we were having such a strong month and we've been, continuing to try to refine our accounts receivable valuation process, we actually took a very conservative approach in trying to value that charge increase. It's going to take us a few months to just see how payments are coming through on the accounts that were from January to about March. So it'll take us a few months to see that play out. We are seeing some increases in bad debt, and when I show you the slide on payer mix, you'll see it, especially in the outpatient side, where the uninsured population is starting to grow. I attribute some of this to the fact that after the pandemic, Medi-Cal went back through the redetermination process that had been on pause for a while. And that meant that patients that had the Alliance or another managed Medi-Cal plan were not necessarily going to be able to stay on that plan. Now, there's now new things going on, like the fact that there has been expansion for undocumented, thank you for the word, So we will see kind of how that plays out. And you'll see it's not a huge spike, but it is noticeable. We did well on labor expenses, 1% below budget. I think that's good to know because January is a month where you have a couple of holidays, which result in higher premium pays, the overtime, double time, especially on the holidays, the way our CBAs and things are structured. And we did have a very large supply. Our supply number was kind of out of whack from where it's been. We've done some review. There was a couple of transactions in there. Some of them just, they got complicated because of mapping issues and things that we were correcting from previously. And then some, the surgical volume, sometimes those supply costs and implant costs are not immediately available to us and might carry over from a prior month. And then we did learn that our quality assurance fees, or the QAF that we talk about, program 8 was delayed in its approval, and so it was not approved by the time we were finalizing the budget. It's now been approved. We've actually made some payments into the program already. It had a higher increase in the fee portion than we had anticipated. Good news is it also has a higher amount of receipts back. So it doesn't have a horrible effect on the 2024 budget, but it is something we'll see on the line item comparison. The one other thing I'll just mention, and I don't have a slide about it, is, you know, we budgeted like a $335,000 EBITDA loss and a $6 million consolidated loss for the year. But there's 1 month, and you'll see it in March when we make our Packard loan payment, where we recognize that revenue. No new cash in the door, but we recognize the revenue. So if you think about trending our, spreading our budget and accounting for 1 month that takes a huge spike, it pushes everything else down. So that's why you see such a large loss budgeted in the month. It still works out to the same budget that was approved. It just has an anomaly in it. Inpatient volumes, we didn't quite hit our budget on the inpatient volumes. And we were a little bit, we're below last year, but I think one of the significant contributors as to why we are below where we were last year is there's been a lot of work on the proper identification of inpatient versus observation. Last year at this time, we were admitting a lot of folks to inpatient that really only qualified for an observation stay. And, thank you to the case management team and the physicians and everybody who's worked very hard on that one. Deliveries were below budget, and, not real high delivery month, but you'll see a slide later that says, while there is a bit of a decline, it's not as drastic as these numbers might represent. Same thing with surgeries. And, through all this, we did see a higher census in January than we had in December. I wanted to throw in a little look up here in the left-hand corner is admissions. It's a slight downward trend, but like I said, I think the main contributor is that inpatient versus obs work that we've been doing. And then length of stay has been trending down as well slightly. We've always had a pretty solid length of stay, and usually when we get up closer to 4 or over 4, it's just a handful of patients with very long lengths of stay. But other than that, we really do quite well on this measure. Here's what deliveries looks like. You can see slight downward trend, gets a little bit spiky in the winter months. Our high was August of last year. And so I think we're still doing fine there. Here's the inpatient payer mix. This is based on admissions. And our payer mix did improve just kind of December to January. I think one of the things that stands out here, and we'll see it as we watch this year, is sometimes the seasonality. When you look in the summer months, June, July, August, we tend to have more commercial payer mix, and that I kind of attribute that to more people coming into the area to go to the beach or to take advantage of some of the fun down here. It might be commercially insured. But nothing too out of whack here. We actually had kind of rebounded with our alliance, which is the yellow, because that had fallen down a little bit last month, but back in the 40% range. On the outpatient side, we didn't meet our ED budget for the month, but we still managed 88 patients a day, so a pretty strong ED month, and about 7.7% of our patients result in inpatient admissions. That's been pretty steady over the last few months as well. The non-ER volumes, your labs and radiology, surgeries, those were at budget and pretty close to last year's volumes. That's good because we've experienced a few months where those were down, either due to staffing issues or equipment issues. And then we had a very strong outpatient surgery month with 132 outpatient surgeries, highest that I've seen in the last 14 months that I've been here. Largest increases in GI, general surgery, and ortho. And we had a good month with the robot. 16 is one of our higher months on the robot. Just another look at outpatient visits, orange being the non-ER visits and blue being the ER visits. And really this just shows you, we run pretty close to a 50-50, sometimes a little bit, 45-55 split. Surgeries, the blue is your outpatient, orange is your inpatient, and you can kind of see how January's blue really spiked up there. And it's been pretty strong, in the last few months, which is a good sign for us. On the outpatient side, payer mix is fairly stable. Up there at the top, you can barely see the green, but that's where you can see that uninsured population is growing a bit. It was at 3.2%. I think that's 3.1% in January, whereas, earlier in the year, we were in the 2% range. Everything else is actually pretty solid, sitting at about 21.5% on the commercial side. Any questions?
That last, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead. I was just gonna make a quick comment, that last slide of the uninsured patients, it's from the second that policy decision came into place in like June of last year. I mean, we've seen, it's just been rising all the way up into 3.4%. I mean, it's a policy decision for the state of California. Obviously we can, be advocates for our community to try to get, Medi-Cal expansion, that stuff, but that's what, as someone who works in the nonprofit sector with that sort of population, what I was afraid was gonna happen is more and more people are gonna be uninsured or underinsured because of that policy decision. So yeah, it's tough to see.
I think the Alliance had, they had forecast it was gonna be like 17 or 18% of their population was gonna lose coverage, and at least the last board meeting of theirs I went to a few months ago, that's where they were trending.
Should ask, I'm encouraged to see surgery numbers up. Do you have a sense of why it is? I know there's some randomness to it, but have things congealed or gelled in a way?
I might let some of my peers help answer that, but I know one of the things that, has been solid work is just on the anesthesia coverage, so that, we can have the rooms covered with staffing.
That's the answer.
Staffing as well,
Yeah.
availability.
And then the other question I had, the Medi-Cal, straight Medi-Cal stuff, is that mostly OB, emergency Medi-Cal and OB, or do we have a non-managed care, a Central Coast or Central California Alliance population?
I'm not real familiar with the underlying details at the service level, but primarily, everybody is the Alliance, and I think we're sitting at that's my orange, so about 5% is the other.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so now, any public comments? No?
thank Julie for her time. It's always fun diving into this on finance committee, getting into the weeds, and I appreciate you still poking into the weeds now, and that's good for all of us to share the details, especially on payer mix. Make you take a really complicated model and you make it digestible, so thank you for that.
Excellent. So if there's no public comment, that brings us to, discussion item number 8, which is the medical executive committee report for February. This was presented in closed session. In summary, we reviewed credentialing and, some of the medical staff updates. I'm happy to, entertain a motion to approve the MedExec report.
I'll move the staff recommendation. The materials were really always well presented. It was harder to understand this whole thing about a year ago, but now I'm getting the rhythm of it. And there's a lot of detail in the packets, but I appreciate having that detail really. So thank you for having that come out in packets. They really do give us the time to really understand it. So, sorry. I move staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
Okay, and just for completeness, that included the report, proposed update to anesthesia clinical privileges, and proposed update to the CRNA privileges.
Affirmative. Confirmed.
Thank you. Director Gallagher,
Yes.
Director Nunez,
Yes.
Director Pimentel,
Yes.
Vice Chair
Yes.
Fox.
Public comment? All right, that brings us to our last agenda item, the Pajaro Valley Healthcare District Healthcare Corporation amended articles of incorporation. And we will be looking for a motion.
Okay, I'm gonna try to make this one simple because
Claim to the state.
sounds more complicated than it really boils down to. You know, we've been on this journey to get sales tax exemption, welfare tax exemption. And there's a number of steps that all started with having to become a nonprofit corporation, which we applied for and got approved in August. Then you fill out a lot of paperwork to go after this organizational clearance certificate. And there's, you know, a bunch of stuff that gets submitted with that application, including our articles of incorporation. And when that application was submitted, it came back from the Board of Equalization saying that it didn't comply with tax regulations. And this was due to a change that the state had made recently in basically trying to automate something and putting kind of a generic blurb in there that was not going to comply with what the Board of Equalization needed. So the answer to fix this and then keep moving ourselves in the process was to amend the articles of incorporation. Along our legal team has been very supportive in helping us get the proper wording. What did the state need in order to, or the Board of Equalization, you know, in order to meet the tax regulations. And it boiled down to a couple of sentences that really just get more specific. They go from kind of a generic, talking about, you know, if this corporation was to dissolve, to go to some nonprofit corporation, to be more specific to hospital care use. So it's really a minor change that just talks to the specificity of what would happen if we were to dissolve. And by getting the approval today to amend our articles and also asking that we are trying to run this back up their flagpole and get them to pre-approve the language before we go all the way through the submission package. So we are asking that if they come back with a, you forgot to cross this T, dot this I, that we have some authority to just make minor changes without coming back. But this has been kind of previewed already with the folks there. So we're just asking for approval to amend our articles of incorporation so that we can send them up through the Secretary of State, get them filed, and then continue this process towards our organizational clearance certificate and ultimately tax exemption.
I'll happily move staff's recommendation.
I'll second that.
Can I interrupt one, just real quickly? Sorry, you were too quick for me. I think we'd like to add another potential little tweak here. And tweak the language if the BOE accepts it, so that upon dissolution, the assets first go to the district. And then if the district for some reason no longer exists, then go to a nonprofit. I just want to have that clear. The BOE may or may not accept that, but I wanted to at least get the board's approval that we could do it that way. Does that make sense?
I'll happily amend my motion to approve staff's recommendation, adding a fifth item that grants staff the authority to work with the BOE on that alternate proposed language, but to ultimately concede if the BOE doesn't accept it.
Perfect. Thank you.
The
Yeah,
second, Sam.
I'll accept that amendment.
Thank you. Okay, Director, Gallagher,
Yeah.
Director Dugas,
Yeah.
Director Fidel.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cox.
Yes. Excellent. That brings us to the end. So we'll adjourn this meeting.